Hello, my name is Helmut. I'm the son of the heroine of Marty's book, Gretel's Cross. My mother was born at the beginning of the 20th century and died in 1990, and so she was living through the whole 20th, more or less through the whole 20th century. And the 20th century was probably the worst century in the history of maybe mankind, at least of the history of Germany, with the World Wars I, World War II, inflation, 2 times devaluation of the money, where people lost a lot of money, unemployment, etc. I was born in 1938, and my own memory started maybe in 1942. So, because Marty's book is ending with the end of the World War II in 1945, so my personal memory, which I could share with him, is just spending 3 years or 3.5 years, but these were very exciting years, because we lived in 1942 in the city of Stuttgart, which is in the southwest of Germany, and at that time the Allied bombing was starting. I lived there with my family and my 2 brothers, and when the bombers came, the alarm went on, and they came always at night. So our parents took us out of the bed and rushed us down to the cellar where all the other people who lived in the same apartment building were already sitting. And there we sat through an hour or hour and a half of heavy bombing, explosions. The earth was quaking. The women were praying, and the men were maybe cursing, and the people, the children, were either crying or sleeping. When the alarm came that the whole thing was over, we went up into our beds while our father, together with the men, went out to extinguish fires and to dig out people out of the debris. So that was my first experiences in the war, and in 1943 the war and the attacks, the bombing became even worse, and so the family decided that our mother and the 3 kids should go to her home place where she was born, which is a little town in Lower Franconia. And there we went. We had relatives there which welcomed us, and we lived there, quote unquote, in peace, until towards the end of the war. Also there were some bombings of this little town. The little town is has a medieval wall around it with 3 medieval gates through which you entered the town or you left the town, and 1 gap in the wall where the train entered the town. The train ended there. So in 1945, it was in April, the American troops approached this town, and the town was the center of a county, and therefore the Nazi administration was located there. And the first thing they did when they found out that the American tanks were approaching was to burn everything they had, every document, every trace which could link them to their what they've done in that time. And we boys were watching them with big interest. And then the next day the Americans really came and they asked to put up a white sheet on the tower of the church, which at that time was very dangerous because you still could be shot if you put out a white sheet to surrender. And this is a part of the book which describes that dramatic scene. It's very interesting. And in the end, yes, the city surrendered. The tanks came through the gate. One of the tanks took half of the gate with him, and they showed up at the marketplace, where we boys and some others were standing around and looking at them. So the tanks opened and out came the GIs, and one of the GIs just approached me. And I was absolutely flabbergasted. I mean, if an unidentified flying object would have landed and a green Martian would have come out, I would not have been more surprised than about that big guy coming towards me who was totally black. And I've never seen a black person. I didn't know that black people existed at all. So he said something to me. I think it was a sentence in High German, but I didn't understand High German. I just understood the local dialect. And he handed to me a little bar, a brown bar, and made the sign I should open it and eat it. And I looked at it, and I was first grade. I just had learned the capital letters, and so I spelled it an H, an E, a R, a S, a H, a E, and then some very funny letter, which I later found out is a Y, which is never or very rarely known and used in the German language. And so I opened it, I took a bite, and I mean, it's very hard to describe, but it was like another world opened up for me. The taste was so incredible that I was there full with bliss and wonder. I've never had a chocolate in my life. War was my normal view of the world. I thought the world is just war, because this is the only thing since I was born, I experienced. And so this was the end of the war, and that was the beginning of a wonderful time which we shared with our friends, the GIs. Every little boy or girl had a GI friend, and it was a wonderful summer then. Now Marty's book is covering the period from my mother's youth to the end of the war. And this is a book of, many sad stories and many funny stories, and a lot of tension and a lot of, jokes, and I think it's a wonderful book, and the most, or a very important feature of the book is that at least it has a happy end. So this is my story. I apologize for my bad English, but I did my very best. Thank you.
Thank you, Helmut.